Hello, I'm David Hiskey and you're watching the Today I Found Out YouTube channel. In the video today, we're looking at the origin of the word blackmail and the much lesser known Buttockmail. Blackmail has its roots in the early 16th century, first used by English farmers living on the England-Scotland border. It derives from the Middle English word mail, which itself is thought to derive from the Old English word mail, meaning lawsuit, terms, bargaining, or agreement. Over time, this word evolved to mail, which in Middle English roughly translated to either rent or tribute. As such, the rent paid by a farmer living on the Scottish border was known as silver rent mail because it was normally paid in silver. This gave rise to white money or white rent, and eventually white mail. When certain Scottish chieftains and various brigands noticed all these well-to-do farmers going about their business without someone threatening them for money, they decided to start threatening them for money, in return for not raising their farm to the ground and destroying all their livestock. Those forcing the tribute would also then offer their protection to the farmers from others who might try something similar. Farmers almost immediately began referring to this secondary rent they were being forced to pay as black rent or blackmail. Etymologists aren't sure where the black part of the blackmail came from. Seemingly the most obvious theory is simply due to the connotations black had with evil, but the most obvious answer and the correct one aren't necessarily the same, and lacking direct evidence, many other theories have popped up. The most probable of the bunch is by Charles Mackay in the Dictionary of Lowland Scots, published in 1888, who claimed it derives from the Gaelic blaik, meaning to protect, so protection rent. Whatever the case, in 1814, the Scottish playwright Sir Walter Scott gave the world perhaps the most detailed explanation of what blackmail back in those days entailed. In Scott's historical novel Waverley, blackmail is described as follows: a sort of protection money that low country gentlemen and inheritors lying near the Highlands pay to some Highland chief, that he may neither do them harm himself nor suffer it to be done to them by others. Scott also mentions that if a person paying this protection money comes to harm or suffered a loss at the hands of another raider, the person they were paying would endeavor to cover their losses, usually by stealing replacements from someone who wasn't paying them protection money. This all brings us to yet another form of mail that was popular from about the 16th century through the 19th that, purely for its amusing sounding nature, we'd like to bring back into common usage in some form or another today: Buttockmail. Given what you now know of mail, if you guessed that Buttockmail was some form of payment in order to keep things quiet about you having a good time with someone's buttock, you actually wouldn't be that far off. In fact, in Scotland, Buttockmail was a sort of tax introduced in 1595, which was enforced by the church courts. Essentially, if you had sex outside of wedlock, often with a prostitute, hence the buttock part, which was slang for prostitute, and you were a Presbyterian in Scotland, you would often be given the choice of the stool of repentance or paying Buttockmail to stop from having to stand on a stool in front of everyone and get berated by your local minister for your lustful actions. While the latter perhaps doesn't sound so bad to modern thinking compared to having to pay a hefty tax to keep things quiet, without the option of Buttockmail, or if one couldn't afford it, people are known to have killed themselves rather than have to face the stool of repentance and the fornicator label that would follow them in the aftermath. So thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please click that like button below and consider sharing it with anyone you think might be interested. And of course, if you're new to Today I Found Out, don't forget to click that subscribe button to get more interesting videos like this. We release a new video almost every single day, so you're sure to find something you find interesting. Thanks for watching.